The state of New York has become the first state to pass legislation requiring future 3D printers to include some sort of magical detection algorithm and prevent people from printing, quote, firearm parts. However, the problem is such algorithms are going to be impossible to implement, and the end result is going to be more government authoritarianism and likely the possible banning of household use of both 3D printers as well as CNC machines. So here's the bill in question that was recently signed by Governor Kathy Hochul, and the thing is, this bill is basically the state's general government budget. But if we jump down a bit, we can see that under the summary here, we have some comments about establishing crimes related to utilizing 3D printers for various manufacturing purposes. Now, I covered the details of this bill a few videos ago, and for the most part, things haven't changed a whole lot on the 3D printer part. So what I want to do today is show you some examples as to why these algorithms are never going to actually work. The problem with this bill and a similar one that was recently passed by the California State Assembly is, well, they don't have a whole lot of technical details in them because the assumption is that the government in the very near future is going to come up with some magical solution for this problem. But they do basically word vomit some technical definitions, and we can examine why those ideas definitely don't work. So what you're looking at right here, this file that I'm scrolling through, this is an example of a G-code file. Now, G-code are the instructions that are actually sent to the 3D printer or CNC machine to go ahead and manufacture the piece. Now, this includes not only things like settings for the printer, but also the exact commands the print head is going to follow as it lays down the material to print the object layer by layer. Now, these bills talk about the idea that maybe the firmware of the printer can evaluate the G-code being sent to it and see if those are, quote, illegal parts that we don't want people printing. The problem with this is G-code is very specific to the printer as well as to the exact print job. If you change the orientation, rotation, or whatever of the piece being printed, you get different G-code. If you're working with different material, you need different printer settings, you get different G-code. Let's look at an example right here. So here's the main hull for the Pitbull PB4A from my line of Fractured Colony gaming miniatures. And I just went ahead and loaded it into the bed of my 3D printer in the slicer program. And I'm going to go ahead and slice it to get the G-code. And let's save that one off to this file right here. Then, as an example, let me go ahead and just adjust the position of this piece. And then I'm going to also rotate it a little bit so that it's sitting at a different angle. Let me correct that issue. We'll slice this one and save it off to a different file. And you can already see here with these two files, the file size is different even though they're the exact same thing being printed. Loading these files up into a program called WinMerge, which is an open source tool for comparing files, you're going to see that they are completely different. All these dark yellow areas are things that are different. The red values are things that appear in one file, but not the other. And if I go line by line here, you're going to see that every single line of the file is different. So just slight changes to how you print your piece are going to produce radically different G-code, even if it's the same model on the same printer. This is clearly not a solution for detecting certain types of 3D printed things. The other thing these bills suggest is you can take a look at the actual STL files or the computer CAD code at the slicer level and run those against a known set of illegal 3D printable parts and look for a match that way. However, this also will fail really horribly. If we jump back to my folder with sample parts in here, you're going to go ahead and see that I have the STL file that I just showed you a moment ago. And it's kind of a smaller file, around 680 kilobytes, but some of these STL files can get really large. Here's one you'll be seeing in a little bit that's around 90 megabytes. And as one more example, here are some of the files from One Page's Rules, Age of Fantasy Regiments, and these combined miniatures are all around 70 megabytes in size. So in order to compare large files, you often do something called a hashing algorithm. What this is a complex series of mathematical steps that takes a large series of data, runs it through these math steps, and will always produce the exact same but very small amount of output data that is more or less, it's not, there's some duplicates, but it's more or less a unique fingerprint of that much larger chunk of data. So in particular today, we're going to look at something called the MD5 hash. It's more of an older technique, but it's still something that can be commonly used for this type of purpose. Let's jump into a command line over here in Windows PowerShell, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to run that STL file for my Pitbull main tank haul through the MD5 algorithm, and you're going to get an output here that is relatively small. So in theory, you could take the STL file that was loaded into the slicer, run some sort of known hashing algorithm on it, and compare that output to a list of legal files and be like, hey, we can't print this file because the MD5 hash matches one that's known to be an illegal file. The challenge there is that the way hashing algorithms are designed is that even small changes in the file data are going to produce a radically different output. Let's take a look. Here we are inside a Blender. I have 2 copies of that STL file I was talking about. And if I go ahead and make a very minor cosmetic change to one of these files, so let me take this little corner on the armor panel right here and move it just there. Just a tiny little bit of a change that if this was some sort of functional part, it's not going to actually affect the overall integrity or structure or usability of this part. And then let me export this to a different STL file. And now we have a different file, which is main tank mod STL, and you can actually see the file sizes are the same because the amount of data in there is the same, which is just the points and lines that make up the 3D model. But if I run this new file through a hashing algorithm, you're going to see that the output of the hash is drastically different, even though the file changes were very minimal and purely cosmetic. Now, if you do look at the New York build, there is some talk in there about bringing AI experts in the process, which would seem to suggest there's going to be some amount of AI scanning of these files, which means that when you go ahead to try and print these files or you load them into your slicer, it's going to send them off to some sort of AI service, examine them, and try to figure out whether they match an illegal part or not. Now, there's 2 obvious problems right here. One, AI matching is going to produce things that are definitely false positives. And frankly, the government doesn't really care. In the state of California's bill, there's talk in there about, well, you can have a certain amount of false positives and still pass this magical algorithm requirements they're going to come up with. So things when we're talking specifically about firearms, I've shown this guy off on this channel quite recently a lot because of this topic. Cosplayers and people who work on films who do 3D print replica firearms, well, this bill is going to be a problem for them because things like this could very likely get flagged because even though they're not a real firearm, they certainly look like they are. But there is a much more practical problem, which is that you can start hiding your file you're trying to print with a bunch of extra material that'll likely get through an AI algorithm, and you would just pass on instructions to the person who's trying to print the piece saying, well, you got to remove these things in post or sand this down or whatever it may be. And let me show you one simple, very common example. Now I'm going to make this video assuming that you're fairly new to 3D printing, and what you need to know about 3D printing is that if you want to print certain types of files, you need what's called support material. This is throwaway plastic that is just there to help support the structure of the 3D object being printed because you print things layer by layer. So if you look at the haul that I was printing a moment ago, you can see all these blue things. These are pieces of support material that would get removed after you printed the object. Now the thing is, in this case, the support material was added automatically by the slicer, but it's quite common for support material to be added as part of the actual STL file that is given to you by the person who created the said file. In another moment here of shameless self-promotion, these are some of the miniatures that I'm working on for the upcoming Caladagia board game that I've talked about a few times on this channel for the past now 1.5 years or so, maybe 2 years. And what you can see though is all these little structures attached to the miniature, those are support material that have already been added in the miniature. They were not added by the slicer, but they are part of the actual STL file. Which means if this thing was to be scanned by some AI algorithm, these little structure pieces here would be sent off to the AI algorithm to be scanned, which is going to make any sort of detection very, very difficult because, well, you have extra material here blocking what the actual piece looks like. And you can just go in and add extra support material for the sole purpose of trying to hide what you're printing, or add on extra cosmetic stuff to hide the fact that what you're printing, such that this part that you're trying to print just looks like something totally else, and it will get through any sort of basic AI algorithm because it looks totally different than what it's intended to be. And the other problem with this process that I've just kind of casually mentioned during these steps here is that your STL files are going to be sent off to somebody else to do the evaluation. So that means if you're developing some sort of interesting or unique intellectual property, like say a new tabletop game property, or perhaps you're working on some sort of clever new innovative product, and that means you're going to be sending off your intellectual property to somebody else who may be a potential competitor who wants to steal that stuff and produce them for you. And if you're wondering why I would be concerned about that, let's take a look at one line from the New York bill that was there a while ago that I complained about in my previous video. So the state of New York is going to go ahead and create a library of illegal parts, and that library shall be made available to three-dimensional printer manufacturers, vendors, blah, blah, blah. But I want to mainly focus on the fact they're going to be sending this library of illegal parts to three-dimensional printer manufacturers, many of them who are based in China and are affiliated with the Chinese Communist Party. So yes, this would seem to imply that the state of New York does want to send the CAD files, because this bill also applies to CNC machines for some of our most advanced weapons to companies affiliated with the Chinese Communist Party. And let's be honest with you, those companies over in China, they do not have the best reputation when it comes to properly handling intellectual property, and they have been known to copy and make cheap copies of all sorts of things. So aside from the obvious technical problems of this legislation, we have some powerful political groups who are trying to push for it. Everytown, which is a anti-gun organization, is definitely one of the big groups pushing for this type of legislation. And as I mentioned, because of the fact that it doesn't work, things are likely going to escalate. As much as these groups like to talk about the idea of common sense regulation, in general how they tend to work is escalate things. Once they get something, they're going to push for something more. Because frankly, as I've talked a lot about on this channel, banning the tools of violence doesn't actually solve the problem of humans committing violence. Therefore, when these 3D printing algorithms are inevitably going to fail and people are going to go ahead and keep printing weapons with them, different groups are going to be pushing for more stricter regulations. And in terms of someone who's a lot bigger than these guys, well, the United Nations themselves are now starting to get involved in the 3D printed space, at least talking about it on some of their news pages, which is only going to make things much more difficult for those people who really like 3D printing. And that is why my concern is that as these algorithms get implemented and fail because they're impossible to enforce, the end result is that somebody, whether it be at a state level or a federal level, is just going to go ahead and mandate that all future 3D printers be prevented from sale to household consumers. And I keep saying household consumers because in these bills, especially the one that's floating around in California, fully functional 3D printers without these checks are allowed to be sold to large multi-billion-dollar corporations, thus denying you innovation, but allowing large existing players to continue to innovate with these awesome and advanced tools. This is clearly just an attack on your right to manufacture your own things, as well as create businesses that compete against well-established corporations. So what's the end result? I think the end result is likely that people are going to demand that 3D printers eventually be banned, because that's the only way you're going to be able to keep certain things out of the hands of people who should not have them. Well, that's about all I have for you guys today. Granted, it's not the best way to end the video, but related to this, I might have a review of the relatively new Prusa Core 1 Plus coming soon. My Ultimaker is 8 years old and it's getting tough to find parts for it, so I decided to go ahead and upgrade. So I'll keep following these news stories, and I imagine California is going to pass their bill and have it signed by the governor here pretty shortly, and I will let you know when that happens, and I guess we can just kind of go from there and see how things play out. So thank you guys all for watching. I'm Jason, the creator of the Tabletop Battlefield, and I'll see you all next time.